Good morning, all. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, those joining us from Nairobi, rainy Nairobi, or different parts of the country, as we will hear from one of our panelists. Asanteni sana for your patience. We're good to go right now. We have all our participants in terms of our panelists here, and also our keynote speaker represented as of now, and will be joining us as we continue. We appreciate the participants as well and stakeholders who are joining us, as we can see from those in the participants section here on our Zoom meeting. We are also live on YouTube, and we are inviting all comments and questions as this conversation continues. My name is Mark Masai, a journalist as well as a PR practitioner and a good friend of the Kenya Climate Ventures and Kenya Innovative Finance Facility for Water, KIFFWA, who have put this webinar together and conversation together. And we have had several of these. And the reason this is timely and that it is happening, perhaps prophetic, I do not know if the good people of KCV and KIFFWA saw the forecast. It has quite been a downpour earlier this morning. But this is in anticipation of the launch from National Irrigation Sector Investment Plan by the Ministry of Water, of course, and Irrigation, and we'll be hearing about that in terms of what to expect. This will be on Thursday, I believe, and it will run on to the 21st as well. And this is also in anticipation of World Water Day, that is marked on March 22nd. Now, the focus for this conversation and the context, just to keep it all focused here, is water investment, promoting climate resilience and equitable access. And as you can see on the video here, just like to give an opportunity before we meet our panel, I'd like to say asante sana to our director from the State Department of Irrigation, and he represents irrigation, water management, harvesting and storage, Bwana Daniel Odero, in color and in, of course, good color for water in a nice blue suit. Karibu Bwana Daniel Odero, and you would be sitting in for now in place of our keynote speaker, who is Bwana Ephantus Kimotho, CPA Ephantus Kimotho, the Principal Secretary, State Department for Irrigation. And he is not with us at the moment, but you can tell us when we can expect him, and also just say hi to all our participants this morning. Asante sana for joining us.
Thank you so much, Mark Masai. Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Odero, as has been said. I'm a director in charge of irrigation, water management, harvesting and storage in the State Department for Irrigation, Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. I am here on behalf of the Principal Secretary, CPA Ephantus Kimotho, who is not able to join us at the moment, as he's been invited to Senate for a function there, but immediately is done, he will be able to join us around 11. So I believe that is the time that he will be able to make his keynote address as per the program. But for now, I think, Mark, back to you. We can be able to proceed as we wait for the PS to join us. Thank you. And welcome everybody for this forum. It's very important for us. We are launching a very ambitious plan. That is the National Irrigation Investment Services Plan that is going to foster the State Department for Irrigation in making sure that we implement our programs within the next 10 years. So when the PS comes, he'll be able then to give more details concerning that plan. We are beginning tomorrow, which is Thursday, the 20th. And then on 21st is the official launch of the program at the Kenyatta International Convention Center. So welcome all of you. And thank you, Mark, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Mark, you are muted.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Daktari. Thanks goes to KCV and KIFFWA as well for being the conveners of this webinar and conversation, and friends of the ministry as well, being this sector is one that is important to all of us. And I'll start with my prefect for the webinar, Dr. Barbara. Kazimbaya, who will start in form of an introduction, just so that people can know who you are. I'll start with Dr. Barbara, and then we'll go to Elder. Just for those who, yes, they can see the poster as they were anticipating this webinar, but tell us a bit more about yourself, just beyond being the Research Fellow, Strathmore Water Governance and Innovation Hub. Karibu.
Thank you. Asante sana, Mark. I shall be your prefect. Yeah, so good morning, everybody. We are so glad you have joined this, what I expect to be a very beautiful conversation this morning. My name is Barbara Kazimbaya, as has been said. I am currently working as a research fellow at the Water Governance and Innovations Hub at Strathmore University. And just recently completed an assignment with USAID on what was a program known as the Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Finance. And prior to joining USAID, I had also worked at the World Bank as a water and sanitation specialist. So I come with quite a lot of experience in the water sector across the African continent. And I'm glad to be able to join this discussion this morning. Thank you, Mark. Back to you.
Asante, and to Elder. She's joining us from Kisumu, I believe, and she can tell us whether the blessing of rain has visited Kisumu City or if it's not, but we can share. It's still pouring, actually, not pouring, drizzling from where we are in Nairobi. Elder?
Well, good morning. I hope you can hear me. My name is Elder Dongo. I work at Kisumu Water and Sanitation Company, and also the current chairperson of Women in Water and Sanitation Kenya. In Kisumu Water, I'm the head of commercial services. Thank you.
Asante sana, and Euphrasia, you can introduce yourself as well.
Sure, my name is Euphrasia Luseka. I'm a water governance and market systems development specialist. Generally, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert. I think we keep on learning.
Just so that we can get you clearly, because the audio seems to be a bit sunken. No pun intended, sunken, but it's not too clear. Maybe there's something covering your microphone. Earlier, it was very clear.
Can you be able to hear me now?
We can, but it's still
low.
A bit.
Okay, you can move to the next person, and then I get my headphones.
All right, no worries. Okay, Enoch, Karibu, and I have mentioned what would be something you'd speak on. Tell us where you're joining us from. Actually, yes, you are also not in Nairobi, you're in Naivasha, so Karibu.
Yeah, I'm already in Naivasha, anticipating for Safari Rally that is be here over the weekend. So my name is Enoch Kiminta. I work for Kenya National Water Resource Users Association, a consortium of community-based water resource use association, bringing together the 756 water resource users association working across the 6 basin areas in Kenya. And yes, I'm happy to be here to share some of the experiences, what we are doing in the sector, and also get to learn from other colleagues who are working in the sector. Asante sana and karibuni.
Thank you, and keep your line open. You might be a host of many Nairobians, as we know accommodation kind of is overwhelmed there during the Safari Rally. So.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, Christine Atego, I mentioned Sunken. That was pun intended. Founder, Sunken Limited. You tell us a bit more about that and introduce yourself.
I'm Christine Atego. I am the co-founder and the CEO of Sunken Limited. And Sunken work in partnership with different organizations across the country. And we are in Kakuma, also Turkana, working with the refugees and the host on clean cooking, and also working in different partnership with the different organizations across the country on the irrigation. We are the distributors of solar water pump across the country. Yes. Sunken is, that is sun in Kenya, so that is combined. And I think you are trying to say, you know, it's not about Sunken, but it is okay. And we are glad that, you know, this the launching that is coming ahead, it's long overdue. This is what we've been looking forward to, saying that, agriculture is the backbone of the economy. And it's been, I think a lot have been lacking behind, and being that the government is fully involved, we are so happy, and we look forward and see how it will play around the next 10 years. Thank you.
Asante sana. Ifrija, I believe now we can hear you clearly. Karibu.
I hope so too. Is this a little bit better?
It's still a bit faint, but as we sort that out, I believe we weren't using the headphones earlier. Perhaps we could just, or you could log in and log out as we readmit you with the admin here, just to see if that's the issue, if that resets stuff. But you could quickly say a quick hi to the people represented here, those who are joining us. As you can see, the participants, about 44 at the moment.
Sure. My name is Ifrisa Luseka. I am a water governance as well as a market systems development specialist. I've worked in around, I think, more than 30 countries on water issues, specializing mainly on drinking water in urban and rural areas. And I've been in the sector for the past 15 years. I'm very excited to be here today. I wouldn't want to start this session without sharing what very good colleagues of mine, Engineer Simon, as well as Engineer Lois Wanja, who's the Chief Officer for Water in Tharaka Nithi County. And they said it's quite interesting that 80% of our water is going into irrigation and generally agriculture and farming. And I mean, why do we still have a country that is food insecure, amongst other issues that water can be able to be driving better? So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to having very fruitful discussions today. Thank you.
Asante to Ifrija. I believe we can just try the avenue of logging out and then logging back in, and maybe not use the headphones. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Kingfin Limited, for that comment in terms of not being able to hear clearly, but we'll sort that out. It's being sorted. So let's start with Dr. Barbara. In the context of this conversation, water investments, and you have been in the investment side in terms of the funders of this sector, and you will speak to that in a bit in terms of the changing landscape of that. But you could start with the role of innovation and technology that they play in enhancing sustainable water management, and what are some of the notable research findings that could inform or highlights or patterns that could inform future investments.
Thank you so much, Mark. Just confirm that you can hear me. Thank you so much. So innovations and technology, they can support the water sector at both the water resources level as well as at the water supply service level. And I'm going to give just 3 examples at the water supply service level. When we look at technology, I think just now Sanken was talking about the fact that they are supplying or distributing solar pumps across the country, which is very exciting to hear, because we look at that technology and we see how it can contribute, firstly, to reduction of costs, electricity costs for those that are providing water services. And we know this happens because we've had experience working with a number of utilities in Kenya to try and replace pumps with solar pumping systems. And to give just an example of Isiolo Water, where we saw a reduction of energy costs of about 56%, on what they were spending prior to the installation of solar pumping systems. But we also saw an increase in the hours of supply. So you are not just using technology to do things better, but you are also, it's helping you to deliver the services that you're supplying to people in a more effective manner. Isiolo increased its water supply from 24 hours a week to about 56 hours a week, simply by changing the technology that they were using. So absolutely critical that we work with technologies that are out there in the market. When we look at innovations, we know that companies like Safaricom, and I'm sure there are many others there, have quite a bit of technology which can help us to detect leaks sooner, rather than using more traditional old methods of running around the town. So the question is, how do we begin to work with people like Safaricom, other enterprises that have this type of technology that would help us to quickly detect where we are losing water? And when we're talking about losing water, it is significant in terms of financing. According to WASREP, the water regulator, for water that is sold in Kenya, consumers are paying about 28 shillings, per cubic meter for inefficiency. So we are basically wasting money as a sector. And so therefore, the extent that we are able to call upon technologies which are out there in the market, they might be able to help us to reduce these leakages and non-revenue water, and also be more efficient in the way we operate. The third example that I would give is around sanitation. I know we are talking about water, but we really cannot talk about water without going back to where does all that water go, once we've utilized it. So when we look at sanitation, we've seen innovation there in reuse of waste, that fecal matter, which previously we used to look at as a waste, something we didn't even want to talk about, can be turned, into a financial resource as well. All of us, I think, are familiar with the work that Sanergy and Sanivation have been doing in Kenya. And I know also there are a lot of other Kenyan companies that are doing similar work in converting, what was previously seen as waste, taking it to become a useful resource. And all of that requires innovation. It requires technology that helps us to do things a bit differently. However, when we talk about innovation, I think in the context of Kenya and Africa more broadly, we must also begin to think about how do we provide a system that supports these new innovations? Because it's one thing to design something, it's another thing to get it to scale on the market. And I think that's a space where the public sector can really play a role. And I'm glad to see that the ministry, through the Office of the PS, is also in this conversation, because it has to be a collaboration between the private sector that is innovating and then the public sector that requires these services. And then within that space also is the role of research hubs, such as the one we have here at Strathmore University, and others, that can bring the learning and the lessons from elsewhere, as well as help us innovate even more, within the context of Kenya. So let me stop there for now, Mark.
Thank you for that. And you've even addressed, sanitation, which has also been pointed out here, as you can see in the comment section, as we all follow that. Thank you. Whoever's behind KIFFWA Limited, bringing out some of the aspects there. And in fact, I think I don't know if he's paid for the advertisement, but he's actually already advertised and I'm mentioning this because it's in the name of innovation and the role that it plays. Some of the solutions that can be provided, and he's just mentioned it there, you can read it there for yourself. KIFFWA Enterprises, which distributes IoT connectivity solutions in Africa. And in this, satellite and cellular IoT to connect people, assets, and data, connect with us. And so you can get in touch. This is actually a platform for us to connect and give more conversation to what we're talking about. And he also talks about smart water meter, and you've spoken about wastage. We are paying for wastage of resources, which is not the best use. In the same breath of innovation, Enoch, I'll bring you into this, and this is in the second aspect that we wanted to address when we were briefing you. And in the same name and breath of innovation, what innovative financing or governance models have been successful in your view, implemented from your end to improve water access and quality, and how can they be scaled to other regions?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for that good question. Maybe first of all, I'll just use a minute just to tell participants here who we are. We are the Kenya National Water Resource Users Association, working in the 6 basin areas. And of course, through an act of parliament, the government of Kenya. Sorry? Is someone speaking?
It was a bit of an interruption there. I think someone had activated their side, but carry on.
Yeah.
Start, but
so,
what you do, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, we are working together with the Water Resource Authority to co-manage water resources across the country. And basically, we say we are taking care of our water catchments because we are cognizant that water doesn't come from the tap, but it comes from the catchment. And the status of those catchments must be well conserved, protected, and managed for us to be able to make water available for Kenyans and, of course, for food production in the country. So some of the successful approaches we are putting in place to ensure that really we invest more into water conservation vis-a-vis providing water for food production for domestic use. Where we have about 3 approaches that we are undertaking as an organization. One of them is called payment for ecosystem services, which is basically the rulers across the country partnering with downstream water users. For instance, the water utilities or the water service providers, large-scale farmers, for instance, the flower farms, industries like, for instance, KenGen and also Coca-Cola company really come together and work with farmers to identify conservation initiatives, and then the downstream users whom I've just mentioned sort of incentivize the upstream communities for the conservation efforts they are doing. And just to give examples where this is happening is, for instance, in Kenya's Abatana, that is on the, I think on the Naivasha, so on the southern side of the Aberdare, there is a payment for ecosystems scheme, which has been used to encourage upstream communities to continue engaging, for instance, in soil and water conservation, tree planting, which includes water-friendly trees and trees that can provide fruits for communities to supplement their diet, and also sustainable land use, really to reduce sedimentation, which, of course, this project is being steered by the Nature Conservancy, KenGen, and, of course, with the technical support of the Water Resources Authority. The other example is in Lake Naivasha Basin Scheme, whereby flower growers have come together and really motivate farmers in the upper catchment, in the Aberdare for the Naivasha case, to really work together with the upstream communities to do some conservation agriculture, which really looks at their actions, not tampering with the water quality, not tampering with the water quantity. And the Naivasha one is quite successful. We started in 2009, and now we are almost in the 16th year, whereby there is a good working relationship between the private sector, that is the flower farms, the hoteliers, and the communities in the upper catchment, really to work together to through this initiative to see how we can invest in water conservation in Lake Naivasha Basin. The other approach is really on public-private partnerships, which again, in Naivasha, it has really worked well. In Mount Kenya, through MQuEP, it has really worked well in terms of bringing together the private, the communities through the RUAs, and the government of Kenya when it comes to policy backstopping, water resource regulation enforcement. So RUAs collaborate with the private sector players, for instance, infrastructure development, and water service delivery. Also, when it comes to savings, RUAs have established savings groups, or which are working towards revolving funds, where the individual members can contribute small amounts, and these loans are used for small water-related projects, which includes maybe water packaging, which includes maybe working towards advancing loans to their respective members, so that they can be able to get some of the inputs for them to continue doing food production and, of course, conservation. And this is happening, for instance, in Tana, where some RUAs have created water user saving groups that finance household water needs. Also, in terms of blended finance, RUAs are also leveraging funding from development partners, for instance, Acacia Water, WWF Kenya, and also they are also working with the microfinance institution and government agencies, for instance, the water service trust funds. Also, in terms of co-management with the government, some RUAs have formalized agreements with, for instance, Water Resources Authority and the Water Service Trust Fund to jointly manage water resources. This is to ensure community participation and financial support from the government of Kenya. This is implemented, of course, by the Water Resource User Association, the Water Resources Authority, but on a small scale due to limited funds. This is is also working pretty exemplary well in the Mount Kenya region, where the RUAs in that region work with the WRA to collect fees, for instance, and enforce water use regulations. So there's a kind of a binding agreement between RUAs in that catchment and the Water Resource Authority, really to work as agents of WRA in terms of water use fee collection.
Yes.
Also, in terms of digital water payments for monitoring, RUAs are using the Internet of Things. This has been mentioned by my previous speakers, whereby mobile payments and digital metering, for instance, the smart meters, has been started to help improve water use fee collection, and also again it has really helped in reducing losses from non-payment of water use fee. So all that really has come in handy in really ensuring that RUAs are able to address some of the issues that are impacting the sustainable management of our water resources. Thank you, Master.
Let me just interject on that. Thank you for that response on the innovative financing models as well as governance models that you have implemented, and successfully so, to improve water access in the spirit of this conversation. And for those who've just joined us as a conversation continues, you've probably heard Bwana Enoch keep saying RUA, and that is a representative of the Kenya National Association of Water Resources User Associations. Just in case you were not in on the introduction as he was doing that. And onto, I think you can also see that the office of the Principal Secretary is also joining in and just getting ready I think our PS is almost ready to speak. And once they are, as you can see the framing there, that's just getting ready. And once he is ready, and I can see Bwana Daniel there, we will be able to tune in. They'll just give us a signal on our end, and we'll be able to start. And we can get probably a thumbs up if this is a point where we can engage Bwana PS and team. If so, you could give us a thumbs up and Asante sana. Bwana Daniel Odero, when we started, it seemed to be just your office, and now I see you're joined by two other gentlemen, a bigger office, the boardroom, and to our PS Principal Secretary, CPA Fantas Kimodo, asante sana for your time from State Department for Irrigation. We understand the busy schedule, so asante sana, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to now give the keynote address and just say hi to the 48 or so participants so far in the webinar.
Thank you, Bwana Mark Masai, and I'm happy to be here in this water investment, climate resilience for equitable access. I think what I would like to say is that it's actually happening at a very good time when, as a water sector and irrigation sector, we have just concluded coming up with a plan for water investments, specifically for irrigation. That is a National Irrigation Sector Investment Plan, which will be launching on Friday. And in that plan, there are quite a number of investment opportunities. And actually, the plan is very well aligned with your theme for this conference, issue of water investments. The plan plans to put an additional 1 million acres under irrigation. And for us to be able to do that, we have to build a water infrastructure so that we can enhance our water security. So water security will be one of the key pillars of that plan. And something else that's more important is that the plan somehow tends to deviate from the normal funding system whereby we're relying on government and development partners. The plan attempts to catalyze private sector investment in a big way, and also climate funding. Those are some of the key things that the plan plans to look at. And we're talking about matter sustainability. That also matter sustainability is one of the key things that the plan is also trying to look into. The issue of water, protecting the water catchment also is part of what the plan, also the National Irrigation Plan tries to look into. And towards implementation, the plan has outlined 5 key investment pathways. And these pathways, they all try to address the issue of distributing water in an equitable manner and also trying to address the climate resilience. One of the pathways is ASALs, whereby in this pathway, we are trying to see how we can unlock the potential of irrigation or the potential of agriculture in the ASALs. As you know, 80% of the country is more or less like ASAL, not quite arable land, but with water, 80% of the same 80% becomes quite arable. And that's why the plan is actually trying to put all efforts towards ensuring that we have built enough water infrastructure. And one of the key things, like in the ASALs, we are looking at an intervention. We have mapped all the lagers. Realize that we have a lot of water that when it rains, and so we've mapped almost 668 lagers, which have a potential of helping us dump over 480 million cubic. But still, there are more, but that's so far what we've actually mapped, mainly in the ASAL areas. And having done the mapping, now from that we've also gone further and identified the potential areas where we can go to dam and get much more water. Then the plan is not working in silo. The plan also, we are working closely. We also mapped a number of stakeholders, some of them including the county. The counties are actually playing a very key role. In every county that we are actually working with, we are trying to establish what we call County Irrigation Development Unit, who are going to deal mostly with the last mile. In the plan also, we are, especially in the ASALs, we are working closely with the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, where they'll also be helping us establish a feedlot. And that feedlot will help, or what we do mostly on our part is to build pasture, is to actually do irrigation for pasture, so that you can be able to support the feedlots, especially during the drought season. So the other investment path that we have in that plan is what we're calling FLEED. FLEED is Farmland Irrigation Development, and this has I think one of the biggest potential. This is whereby you're talking about farmers who are actually taking their own initiative to go ahead and do irrigation. In this, we're trying, some of the interventions we're trying to come up with is one, is to reduce the affordability gap. As we're coming up, we're working with some of our development partners to see how we can reduce that by giving a small rebate on the irrigation equipment. So this by itself, that by itself will make it affordable, so many farmers will be able to access, and that means many opportunities for irrigation service suppliers, irrigation equipment suppliers. And then on the same again, we also trying to establish a credit guarantee scheme, which will be giving partial guarantees. That again will continue ensuring that we de-risk our farmers. So that means our farmers will be able to access, have ability to access more, and our bank will have the ability to even give more credit towards that. So we believe by doing that again will expound The other thing also we are trying to do is to the other investment pathway that we have is a community irrigation scheme. This is whereby we have a community coming together, setting up a cooperative, and the government builds for them the main infrastructure. Then the last mile connectivity, some of the farmers and the county, they do the last mile connectivity. In what we are calling, we are proposing a formula of blended finance. Before, government has been doing almost 100%, and that has proved to work, but not quite, especially when it comes to sustainability. But associated by having the government, the farmer, and the county all together funding the same infrastructure. We have seen from one of our programs that we run called Mount Kenya Smallholder in Mount Kenya region. So you have seen that also is enhancing sustainability. And sustainability is key because of the water efficiency and the scarcity of water. So again, that model not only helps us in accelerating our investment in that sector, it also helps us in ensuring the sustainability. And also, so us supporting that pathway, we also trying to create market linkages with our aggregators who will be able to release the market. And when we release the market, the farmer also gets guaranteed income, and they get guaranteed income, then they also, even their ability to pay increases, and they're able even to maintain the infrastructure, and that also enhances sustainability. The other pathway that we have is corporate agriculture, whereby we're targeting the big, where we have the big pieces of land. Here we're targeting large-scale producers who will be working with under PPP. Again, in there also, there are a number of opportunities. We talk about PPP. As the role of the government there is to ensure there is water security, but in that we're having like two kinds of PPP partners. One for building the infrastructure, like for example dams, and where there's a viability gap. In the plan, we are trying to establish an irrigation fund which will come and bridge the viability gap. Then the balance now, we can get a PPP partner who can do the funding and pay himself through irrigation tariffs. Again, as government has gone further and established a framework to support the irrigation tariffs. So that is also, that's one of the support missions. Also, we are also in recognition that of the fact that most of the large-scale producers also are looking to produce competitively, and that's why most of them will be adopting mechanized farming, precision farming. But also on in the part of the government is looking at such producers and also our local producers tapping into the existing markets, but also to ensure that they produce competitively. Some of them will be helping them establish in already special economic zones that are supported by the agriculture. That's a special economic zone supporting agriculture investment loan. That will ensure that they get a few tax rebates, which will ensure also they produce competitively to be able to access more markets. And if they do that, they continue increasing the acreage and irrigation, and that will also create jobs and increase the FDIs coming our way. And that will also create quite a number of opportunities for our investors. So those are actually the five. The other lastly pathway is what we call the public schemes. And in there, our key intervention in the public schemes is to ensure we reduce the cost of operation and maintenance. And some of the two quick interventions they're doing towards that is first, we ensure most of our pumping stations are now being driven by gravity to reduce the high cost of pumping using diesel. Also, we're ensuring some of them where we can do gravity, we are doing solar. Again, that is also creating opportunities for climate creating carbon credit projects, and that will also be translated to some funding money. So in a nutshell, that's some of the issues that the National Irrigation Sector Plan is trying to address. But generally, in terms of impact, in terms of the costing of that plan is for 598 billion, which 39% will be funded by GOK and development partners, 61% by the private sector. And in terms of impact, that plan is well aligned with the value chains, which have been established in the better plan to ensure we address issues of security. The plan also will be gearing up towards addressing building resilience in the country, so which is actually one of the topics that we actually are talking about, which is the topic we're having today. And the plan also to ensure there is equitable access all along. The plan has come up with a hydrologic zoning, which actually establishes the water infrastructure required in each and every area. I guess a good example is a place like Wajir where we don't have permanent rivers, that's where there we'll be doing these big water plants, which we already working on one, but which are doing those interventions. So this plan, we believe, would be a plan that would make this country transformative, and it will ensure that there is a equitable distribution of water and access to water. Thank you.
Asante sana to our Principal Secretary, State Department for Irrigation, Bwana Ephantus Kimotho. And this 5-pathway plan that you have shared is also something people can interact with. We'll be sharing this in the comment section. I believe people have seen what we put in the comment section, and this is coming from the State Department for Irrigation. For those who may wish to attend National Irrigation Sector Investment Plan pre-conference, which is tomorrow, the 20th of March, and you have the registration details that you can also utilize right there in the comment section. And also our team here, represented by Lucy Ndumi and others, have also encouraged you to register as well as we continue with this conversation. There's a link that she's posted there at 10:39 a.m. I know you're pressed for time. I do not know, or I could give an opportunity perhaps to anyone within the panel just to perhaps give a quick response. And this is also shared to the team that we have as our panelists, the National Irrigation Sector Investment Plan, and the 5 pathways that he has shared. But we could probably just open it to Christine. You could say a quick response to this. If Christine can hear me.
Yes, Mark, I'm here. And I think what we've heard from the PS Kimodo, it is really something we really look forward to. And I think we are really excited and happy about this because as much as we are looking at irrigation as one of the key important elements in this climate change on the reduction of water wastage, and you know, one of the things that we really find challenging on the ground is about the infrastructure, because we find that as much as we have this irrigation system on the ground, there are areas that are not able to access water. And being that the government is coming on board to put the infrastructure in place, this is one thing that I would say it's a plus for us. And also looking at the funding, because we look at the farmers the farmers are not able to access this, you know, funding and also grant. If the government can come in and, you know, it is about, we're talking about the subsidies, you know, subsidy is very important, because if the government can come in and also bring in more subsidy into this sector, I think that one can ease off the burden within the farmers who are able now to access these facilities like the solar water pumps, the irrigation systems, like the drip irrigation, so that we can also save on the water. Because as Mark, you was excited today at 8 in the morning, and you sent a text and you said, oh, it is raining. It's a blessing. Yeah, because, you know, now if we see it's raining, we are so excited because the water, you know, the rainfall now is so much it's unpredictable. We cannot predict when it's going to rain. And now that, you know, if we put these measures into place and we are able to put the government, the public government, the private sectors are able to come on board and able now to push for this good cause. And we are able now to surge ahead. I think we are able now to see, you know, the economy, you know, opening up, because as we said, agriculture is the backbone of the economy. And if you're not able to, yes, yeah. So that's it. So, yeah, I'm really, and one important thing that I'm also emphasizing on is what we talked about today. If the government can be able to follow through and everything, we are able to feel whatever they're saying in on the ground, I think that one will be a plus for us. Yeah.
And Christine, there's a reason I started with you in terms of response, and I'll give Elda an opportunity to respond as well as the other panelists really quick. But there's a reason I said this, because you say you've been waiting on such a plan for quite some time as CA of Sunken Limited. And I believe PS wasn't in when you were introducing yourself. And so thank you for that response. And to you, Elda, Chairperson of Women in Water and Sanitation Association of Kenya, just a quick response, perhaps feedback to the PS and team, and to give an opportunity to everyone else also to give a quick feedback and response.
Thank you, Mark. I'm happy I've picked a few points from the keynote that has been delivered by the PS. The first one is that they have a lot of investment opportunities and this time around they are looking at the private sector. Looking at the way the landscape has been with the donor and the partnership community, I believe that is a good way. And if we go that way as a country, I believe this will help us get out of a lot of issues that we are currently facing. The second one is that they're looking at equitable resource, the equitable supply of water to everyone else, and unlocking irrigation in ASAL counties. We all know, as a woman, I know that when they're going to try and unlock this irrigation in ASAL countries, what they'll require is the support of women in those given countries. Because irrigation or any other thing that you're doing around climate change requires a lot of resilience. And if you're talking about resilience, that person who you get in the ASAL community to really engage in these activities are women. So as you go out there, ensure that during setting up of these committees, during working out the plans that you're going to have, ensure that you have women on boards from the national level up to the ground, the community levels. In that way, because you require you require the strategies you're having to work, then you require people who are resilient. And I believe that you'll only get from the women communities and even the women groups that are already formed on the ground. Thank you.
Asante, and Enoch, I'll give you an opportunity to ask directly. I think you can see from PS's team can see the question that is in comment section, but Euphrasia Luseka, you haven't been able to speak previously. Your water governance and market systems development specialist. I'm sure you'll be keen to go for this pre-launch and even the launch itself. As you were listening, what came to mind? You can give quick responses and feedback, and we can then go to Enoch and Dr. Barbara.
Sure. I hope now you can be able to hear me a little bit better. I'm so excited. I picked a few things, and I'm still coming back to the very good point that Elda has been able to put across on private sector participation. Let me just read what I was typing here as the PS was speaking. And I feel that strongly, it's not that it's just about private sector participation, but also looking at creating financial incentives for the private sector engagement agenda. And this even goes towards issues to do with insurance mechanisms, as well as climate adaptation financing. So let us really be keen on what we really intend the private sector to be coming in to support us on. At the same time, the Dutch king is in the country. I have been in Netherlands before, and they're doing a good job with the farming systems. It would be quite a very interesting opportunity for us to move ahead to see how we can be able to collaborate with such entities to be able to now do a little better on an irrigation agenda. Then again, I wanted to talk about the bit of multi-sectoral partnership. And this actually goes to how capital intensive water infrastructure is. So if we can be able to get the private sector and also do this proper PPP contracts that can be able to not only support the bit on irrigation, but also be able to benefit the drinking water component, that again would be quite interesting. And also coming into the sanitation agenda, it would also support wastewater management, and we see how we can use that water back into our agricultural activities. Lastly, I'd like to also pick up a bit on innovations. I would really be keen on saying that we're not going back to the innovations and technologies that are keeping us at survival mode, but taking us to prosperity level. So I'm going to stop there, Mark, and I'm very grateful for this important document. Thank you.
And I see one PS and the team are taking notes as you speaking, and perhaps that pre-launch event is something you would want to attend if you're able to, and that's to everyone on the webinar. And I'm sure they'd want to engage you. expertise. And on this question you posted here in the comment section, I'd want to give you an opportunity to speak in terms of a quick feedback based on the work that you do on ground, since you're very much on the ground.
Energy sector.
Thank you very much, Bwana Mark. Good morning, Bwana PS. I'm so happy to have you join us here today for this very, very important webinar. And I just want to really commend the Department of Irrigation for three main things. First, I think through the PS, the Irrigation Department has taken the cognizance of water as an important untapped asset for Kenya. So through this NISIP, I think we'll be able really now again really to ensure that we address the issue of food security in the country and ensuring that we get rid of hunger in our beloved country, Kenya. So I've really read through the plan. It is quite good, quite commendable. But I picked a few concerns, and one of them I've posted in the question in the chat, which basically I wanted to understand the specific interventions which were not really very clear that will ensure that investment in water is really factored in when it comes to water resources. That is our catchments, which are which are in very bad state at the moment as we speak in terms of degradation. And looking at how our farmers produce food, the pesticide, the herbicides, and all that they are using. What are some of the strategies maybe the department through the plan put in place to ensure that there will be no contamination for our groundwater and surface water? Thank you.
Asante sana to Enoch, and he speaks from his vantage point there and work on the ground that he's engaged in over the years as CEO of the Kenya National Association of Water Resources User Association. So it's important that we hear from all our participants and experts in this space. I don't know if there's a quick response from our PS or Bwana Daniel. He's also from the State Department of Irrigation. Karibuni, you can respond.
Okay. Thank you, and also for the participants. Probably, let me start by Christine. Christine, I think thank you for your comments. I think there is something I captured that you said, the issue of subsidies in the sector, and also the issue of government following through. One thing I want to say is that like one of the pathways, what we call the FLEED, the farmer-led irrigation development, is actually going to be driven by the banks. So it's clearly and what you envision, the solution whereby we are going to have a database, a system that will be linking farmers, will be plugging in that system directly, making a request, and we'll have the banks will have an access so they can see that the farmer qualifies to access a loan. Then also we'll be having the irrigation equipment suppliers in that system. So basically that system will be purely private sector driven. It's only us will just be there to give the support to the development partners when it comes to the issue of the subsidy. So it's going to be a market driven. So with that, ours is more like being more of an enabler, and if there are any challenge of policy gaps, for example, some individuals at times say that the cost of extraction of water for a small player and a big player is more or less the same. So if there anything that needs a regulation change, policy gaps, that's where the government is coming in. So on that, we are 100% sure we'll be able to follow through, because it's going to be entirely a process that is going to be market, private sector driven. Then coming to the other issue of the elder, I think mentioned something also about women, and they are actually to say that 70% actually of our community irrigation schemes are actually, most of the players are actually women. So one of the things that we're doing a lot of capacity building. Once we link the community irrigation schemes with the aggregators, one of the key things that we're doing together with the development partners and some of the foundation in the banks is to ensure we do a lot of capacity building for the same. And by so doing, we know we'll be building resilience and making them be able to easily produce cooperatively and for them to be able to access the market. So immediately after this launch, we'll be doing what we call county NISIP chapters. And we are starting the first one in Washington County, which will be held on May 12th. So we're happy to collaborate with your group so that we can see how we can continue enhancing this process. So it's something that the government is very keen on, because as you know, food security is a key pillar. Actually, agriculture productivity is one of the key pillars, and the only way we can be able to ensure that is consistent, as maybe Christine said earlier, our country, I think 27% is GDP is dependent on agriculture, and another around 2% of the value chains also depend on the same. So the government is actually very, very keen on ensuring following through this plan. That's the only plan that will help us be able to address the issue of food security and support our agro processing, which most of them, like the KIFFWA, the County Irrigation Investment Bank, they all depend. Most of the investors who have come, they've said, okay, yes, we're happy, you can see the infrastructure is there, but what is assurance of consistent production, not the assurance of quality and quantity? And that can only be given, that assurance can only be given by an organized group of farmers who are actually producing under an irrigation scheme. So that you can count on, you can hold government accountable on that. So we'll be looking forward to working closely with the women, especially in the counties. So then also there was a question of from Lusepa on creating financial incentives. Yes, the insurance and insurance, actually that's part of what we are looking at. Yes, there's the issue of collaborating with the Dutch. Actually, yesterday we participated in a panel discussion with the Dutch, and we listed quite a number of projects we want to work up with them. And also, there are quite a number of irrigation service providers who are there, but we are really insisting that we'll be happy to work with them if they come and invest in Kenya, as opposed to us importing from their country. And those are the conversations that we actually have with them, and they are happy to actually enhance that collaboration. As you may be knowing, Dutch, I think, is one of the places that is our biggest export destination center. So we continue working with them closely. Then you also mentioned something on the PPP to do with wastewater. Yes, that's what we call the grey water. We actually on having a plan, especially here in Nairobi, on the Rwai where we have a ducting site. So we are trying to work out a plan where with a PPP partner, where the waste can be converted to, after the shipment, it can be converted to fertilizer, which will be used in agriculture, and the water can also be used to do agriculture productivity. So we are open to that. That's one of the things that we actually started. We mapped an area of around 6,000 acres downstream, and that will go towards ensuring also the other question that was mentioned about how do we ensure the surface water is clean. Because like you know, we are depending on that at the river basin on Kowake, which currently I know to be a challenge with the way it is. To be a challenge for us to start damming that water, even using it we'll end up using a lot of money cleaning it. So if we can be able to do something on the upstream, then that will also be very helpful too. So those are some of the interventions that we actually, and that's why we actually are placed here in water irrigation. This is under water irrigation and water sanitation and irrigation. So that's a plan, but we also open to many more other private parties who will be willing to join in and do a PPP under that. Coming to the water, the last question, which was the water catchment, we actually have an elaborated plan with the Ministry of Environment to develop a national resource management system, which will actually outline all these plans, especially more on how we can be, as we extract downstream, how we can be able to actually do a lot of catchment in the upstream, and also down the downstream, where after the PPP also looking at how we can use fleet to ensure even the farmers down the ground, down the stream, and also be able to access water despite us doing irrigation. Then also, lastly, most of the dams that you're doing, they actually multi-purpose dams. So that addresses the issue of irrigation, and some of them where we have good gorges, we'll also be addressing the issue of electricity and domestic water. That is actually some of the collaboration that you're having with the counties. Thank you.
Asante Bona PS, and I know you're pressed for time, but there's one other participant in terms of our panelists, and that is Dr. Barbara Kazimbaya, who is a research fellow from Strathmore. She's actually there at Strathmore at the moment and has also excused herself. And she is a research fellow at Strathmore for Water Governance and Innovation Hub. And she has been following as well the 5-path and the launch on Friday, and the pre-launch is tomorrow. And I'm sure you're seeing the questions and the comments and the responses. So to Dr. Barbara, this is your opportunity to ask direct or even just give a quick response from what you've followed.
Thank you so much. PS, it's wonderful to see you this morning and to listen to the wonderful work that is going on at the ministry. I had really like one maybe main observation here, and as you were talking, I was thinking I wish PS Water was also here, PS Koril, because the link the link between these two is like you cannot really separate them, and I think to the extent that we can multi-use, you know, if you know, like if we are going to be doing these irrigation systems, which have, particularly if we are doing dams, you know, and other water harvesting systems, could we combine them, you know, so that that water provides for both the irrigation, which is critical, but also for domestic purposes, because then that also helps the government to save, you know, that you don't need to do 2 water systems in a community where you can actually provide both. And then linked to that is you made a very good point about sanitation. You know, when we come to sanitation, then you are again on the NAWASIP, you know, rather than the NISIP. And so how do we bring these 2 things together? Because as a sanitation side, we generate a resource for you, you know, that ultimately you use as a fertilizer, you know, on the agriculture side. And so I really think that bringing these 2 together would be a very powerful way for the Kenya government to take this conversation forward. So thank you so much. I don't want to say too much, but I wanted to just put that on the table. Oh, but also to say, I'll be fired if I don't say this. The role of the universities, you know, and the research centers. We are at a time, I think somebody mentioned, I can't remember if it was you, Fraser, somebody mentioned the fact that our traditional development partners are moving away from us and going their way. And so they are telling us, go your way as well. So as we begin to go our way, you know, we also really then need to think, what is that thinking that can come from outside the box that allows us to continue this journey of development without depending on external parties? And I really see a role for universities and research centers such as ourselves to help answer some of those challenging questions. So thank you so much, PS, for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Well, PS, I'm sure you're also going to involve the higher learning institutions that lend a lot of expertise and research in on this as you move forward. So you also have Dr. Bob.
There's something that I want to say.
Yes, thank you, Mark. I think on the screen we can see a question on how US will be working closely with RUAS. I must say thank you, Enoch, for this question. Eric, I think RUAS are the umbrella body at the catchment area, so it has several EUAs that contribute to it. So all our EUAs are registered members of the umbrella bodies, which are the RUAs. So they contribute through WRA, which issues their structural permits to all our EUAs, and this is where even the RUAs are registered. So our EUAs are actually members of the RUAs of the larger catchment areas where they practice irrigation as just part of the water abstraction facilities. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director Daniel Odero. And I think there's a participant who has raised his hand. We'll give an opportunity. I know you're pressed for time, Bona PS, but now that we have you, if we let you go, we'll probably see you at KICC next. So now that we have just a quick one, if admin can give an opportunity. There's someone indicated there as iPhone 5 and would be able to ask, or you could also yes, we've unmuted you, iPhone 5. I believe you're not a bot. You could tell us your name and your question, or at least your comment and feedback.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. My name is Robert Kakubia, and it is very exciting to hear what is coming out of the Ministry of Water and Irrigation, especially the Irrigation Department. And I'm saying this because these kind of plans were what was supposed to follow from the National Water Master Plan, which was actually released in 2014. In 2023, we released the water and sanitation plan. Now we have the irrigation plan. What is really missing here, and this is because we are talking about water security, is the water resources development plan. Because if you really, this is what now you bring these two together. If you look at the National Water Master Plan, we were talking of plans to actually put in like about 58 dams for water conservation and many other and multiple uses. If you look at those 58 dams, if you take like about 20 of them, you already have like 80% of the storage. So I'm not saying that it is easy to do, but somehow we have to start somewhere. If I remember, I think it's only one dam that has been completed, another one that is perhaps coming to completion in West Pokot, the other one in Kiambu. So I think we are still missing in the water resources aspect that actually we might actually make all these plans unravel. The second point I want to raise is, and I don't want to take a lot of time, is the issue of innovation. I think government is the missing link in terms of innovation. Why? Because to bring them to scale, government needs to come in, because it's very difficult to actually procure innovative ideas out there in the market. I think government needs to come in, and there are so many of these innovative ideas coming out of the water sector. For example, in terms of water security, we have innovative ways of managing water services, for example, innovative ways of dealing with sanitation. They are happening. But I think to bring them to scale, we really need government to come in a big way to support these kind of ideas, because at the end of the day, it is actually supporting the achievement of the SDGs. We have research that is happening, and I believe that is what has actually come up with these many ideas in Kitui, in Kwale, in terms of, there was a very big program run by the University of Oxford, which Kenya participated in terms of its apex institutions. A lot of things are happening there, and if those kind of ideas are not brought to scale, then the water security here we are talking about, I think, will just be just basically talking without any change in practices down there on the ground. Thank you very much.
Asante sana, and thank you for your input. It would have been good to see you, at least your face. We only have iPhone 5. You've introduced yourself, yes, of course. But thank you. These are concerns echoed with the feedback that Dr. Barbara has also said. She wishes at the table we also had State Department for Water, because it works hand in hand. Perhaps in terms of closing remarks, if you're pressed for time, I believe you had indicated that you need to leave earlier. On a PS to give quick closing remarks, and we appreciate your accepting to extend as we gave some questions and feedback.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And just to attempt to respond, thank you, Robert, for your very good question. It's true. What his observation is quite true, that in Awasi, we all talk about usage. In NISIP also, we're talking about also extraction. But one of the discussions that actually we were having, and there were both State Department of Water and State Department of Irrigation. One of the discussions that we are actually having with the Dutch investors who are here is how to establish the National Water Resource Development Plan, which will actually now address exactly the issue that Nani has mentioned. I agree with him 100%. Actually, without addressing that, then implementation of these plans might be a little bit of a challenge. Though also, but currently we have many more. I think slightly, in terms of dams, we have the Dwake, which is almost coming to a completion this year. That will be helping us put almost 600 million cubic meters. We have the one he mentioned, the one in Shenguruni, which is also coming to a completion sometimes end of this year. Also, we have Umada, which is in Kitui also, which is also becoming to a completion this year. And very soon, in the next 3 months, we'll be launching Boston Dam in Bomet County, Galana Dam, which will be having a 350 million cubic. We also do it at a PPP. It's also expected to be launched sometimes this year. And they are quite, we also at an advanced stage of Dutch Dam, Susi Dam, and Wat Dam, through a PPP framework. The only thing we are trying to work on right now is how to fund the viability gap. And we've gotten some partners who are willing, development partners who are willing for us to partner and see how we can fund that viability gap because of the potential of those various dams. But I agree with him also for us to be able to enhance that, we need to develop that national water resource development plan, which again will be coupled together with what we call earlier the issue of the system of water catchment. Then lastly is true, the innovations actually is the way to go. And that's something that actually we are also gearing up to. And that's one of the areas that we can easily partner with the universities and see how we can enhance that. The issue of the desalination, we also have a partner down there in Lamu who is actually working on a program of desalination, whereby and the same is being done underwater. The water is going to be used for domestic, but some of the wastewater from that desalination plant, part of the water will go domestic, then part of it will be converted to minerals, and that's where the main return on investment is for the investor. And downstream, some of the wastewater, instead of going back to the ocean, will be used for irrigation. So there's a lot of annexes between us and water. And in there, we'll also be looking at how we can maximize and take advantage of innovation. Just like mentioned also the other one of the Roy plant. But thanks, we look forward to having bilaterals with most of the panelists. We are welcome. I think my team here, but Bonodero here, a very able director, would be left to sit in. But at the right opportune time, even after we launch this, we are looking forward to several bilateral meetings that we can enhance. But there is a must say that this is a very good informative meeting, and we are happy as we continue engaging with our stakeholders in this sector. Asante sana, I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a good afternoon. Of course, getting into the afternoon, and all the best with the pre-launch and the launch. And we appreciate, and even Enoch Kiminta says, to ensure water security, all infrastructure should have an aspect of catchment watershed management. And these are all experts that I'm sure you'd want to engage with your team. And thank you, Bona Daniel Odero, for staying on, and we'll be engaging you as well, and you'll be able to speak on behalf of the State Department of Irrigation. Have a good afternoon, sir. That has been the Principal Secretary, State Department for Irrigation, and that is CPA Bwana Kimofo. Asante sana. And Daniel Odero, I know you'll stay on with us and you'll be following the conversation to now continue with our panel. And now I believe it will be nuanced with what we have heard, the 5-pack plan coming from the department. But it would seem that we had anticipated this as sector play. Christina Tego, I'll bring you in on this. And just to speak about, we've heard of the additional 1 million acres under irrigation, but in your experience as founder of Sunken Limited, what are the main barriers that you have witnessed farmers have in facing and accessing irrigation systems?
Mark, the primarily barrier that the farmers are facing out here is to do with the initial cost of the facilities, like the irrigation facilities, also lack of knowledge or training. We're also looking at the limited access to financing. So if you're looking at the smallholder farmers, you look at, especially in the rural Kenya, they cannot afford the upfront cost of installation of the irrigation system, which is very expensive, even though the systems have a long-term benefit. And in addition to that, you find that financing is often limited. And with many farmers, they're unable to secure loans due to the high profile risk of farming and also lack of collateral. And if you're looking at also when the PS was talking about, you're talking about the infrastructure, but this is one of the biggest challenges also we are facing in the rural areas. Even if irrigation equipment is available, farmers still lack the infrastructure to get water to the field, such as proper water storage or distribution system. And this can be particularly challenging in areas with limited access to electricity or where water sources as far as are far from the farmland. Also, another challenge that out there are the government subsidies. You see that the support programs are also not making this technology affordable for the smallholder farmers. And this include also providing low interest loans to grants. This one can really address these challenges that farmers are getting into, the barriers that are there. And also on training, additional on training and education. This can really be able, the farmers are able to know which equipment are better fit for their farming. And also collaboration between the government and the NGOs. These can also help also the farmers to have a successful program into the Kenya. And if you look at it, we've seen a lot of these programs come on board and help out, like WFP, USAID, and a lot of bodies which have come on, which have always been on the ground to help on this. And this can really, and they've been successful. And the partnership between these people have really come a long way to help empower the farmers. And these collaborations can really help also bring in the technical support and the financial solutions to these farmers on the financial needs. So if the government can also come with the, because one of the key important challenges here is the government subsidy. Because if you look at our counterparts like Uganda are doing so well when it comes to this adapting the technology which are coming in at the solar water pump. If you're bringing in the solar water pump in the country, most of it you're pushing into the Uganda the Uganda part, the Uganda region. And Tanzania now is even coming up, surpassing Uganda. So what is lacking here, which the government need to come on board and assist us as much as we're having all these infrastructure challenges and all that, the subsidy, the product needs to be subsidized. Yeah.
I believe that was also echoed by Frisia in her initial response to PS's presentation, the 5-pathway presentation, and their plan that they have to launch on Friday. Dr. Barbara, on this issue that he seems to go big on in terms of dependence, and Elda, you'll speak to this as well, how best government agencies, Dr. Barbara, do you think they can collaborate with the private sector to catalyze investments in the water sector? Because he says they want to move from government-led or NGO-led or funded projects or sectors.
Thank you, Mark. I was looking for one statistic that I would like to refer to. The private sector can play a role in the water space. And by the way, they do play a role already in the water space. If you look at the suppliers of goods and services to most of the water sector are really private sector. But in this case, we are talking about them bringing significant investments, in infrastructure and other services. And I think there is room there, but it is also tough. There has to be some very difficult conversations. If we think about PPPs, I think PS mentioned the figure of 61% is supposed to come through the private sector of the funding. And I think it's almost a similar number when we look at the NAWASIP, on the water supply and sanitation side. The private sector has one ethos. I'm going in there, I'm going to make money. And if the space is not available or, readily available for them to make that money, then they will not engage. And one of the key challenges we have, and I speak here from the water supply side, is that we have a regulated tariff, which in many cases does not even allow the utilities, to cover their costs, of operation. So you're producing water at a much higher price, and then you're selling it at a much lower price. So you cannot make money. Now, the public sector can do that because it is public and it can find ways in which it can subsidize, the gaps which are there in the financing. But the private sector will not subsidize things like that. So whilst we are interested in having the private sector to participate, we really must then open up this space and have that dialogue to say, what do we do about tariffs? And I suspect that the same challenge you have with domestic water, you probably have on the irrigation side as well. So that's one thing. But having said that, there are other ways in which the private sector can participate without necessarily bringing significant investments. And I'm thinking here about some work which has been going on at the Water Sector Trust Fund, again with support from USAID, where we were trying to say, how can we make loans accessible, in this case for water utilities, but again, it could be applied to farmers, accessible in the way that you are buying down the interest rate. You cannot ask a water utility to borrow at 12, 24%. It's not doable. So how do we buy down that interest rate? By bringing in some public money. And I think somebody else, Engineer Gakubi, I think, mentioned that you've got to have the public sector to come on board and say, okay, from the public sector side, we will bring in this 50 million. Can you now, the banks, match us, with your 50 million so that we blend and we get a much cheaper interest rate, which allows then the parties that are working in the sector to be able to access financing. We can also do things around performance-based contracting, so the private sector doesn't just have to build big dams and big infrastructure. Are there portions of our networks, or maybe even the irrigation systems, which can be hived off for one reason or another, and we say, okay, you take Runda just as an example. As a private party, go in, manage that party, reduce for me, the non-revenue water, which is at 48%, so that I stop making those losses. I stop passing the inefficiencies to the consumers, and then help me to manage that. And as we do that, we are conserving money. So we are conserving both. We are conserving water. We are also conserving money at the same time. So that's a space, again, where the private sector can play a role. When we've been talking about solar, and I was very happy, I think it was Director Daniel who talked about solar systems for irrigation. The same conversation going on the water supply side. What is the challenge with power purchase agreements, in our context here? We did a study and we found that Kenya has a demand of about $31 million worth of investments in solar. Yeah. I think it's 2 megawatts or something like that for water utilities only. Why are we not tapping into that? Why are we leaving that to go? Because with the power purchase agreement, I can get Davis and Shetley from Yale or whoever, do the installations for me so that as a public entity, I don't need to put up the capital upfront. We agree a lease agreement where you build, operate this thing, run it for me for 20 years. I take it from you, after we are finished, and you are getting your money from the sale of my water. There are opportunities there. But again, it's something that we haven't really explored. And again, I feel it could also apply to the irrigation systems as well. So there's a lot we can do, but there has to be some serious conversations in the sector around how we price. Will the private sector get its return on investment? Because if they don't, they will not play ball with us.
In this conversation, Dr. Barbara, thank you for your response. And you've actually addressed something else in terms of how the private sector can play a bigger role in financing or at least investments. So we're talking about water investment, and it is the climate resilience, but also equitable access. And to you, Elder Odongo, as a chairperson of Women in Water and Sanitation Association of Kenya, WIWAS, in the same conversation of involving the private sector, how does WIWAS, or how can WIWAS partner with the private sector and other stakeholders in building resilient communities?
Thank you, Mark. Just to start by a small introduction of WIWAS, Women in Water and Sanitation Kenya is an association of professional women in water and sanitation within the country. And we've been in existence since 2016. And when we're talking about about the World Water Day that is just to be celebrated on Saturday, the first thing I look at is the theme of this year. And the theme gives us its leisure preservation, which highlights the urgent need for responsible water management, conservation, equitable access, and growing challenges that are brought about by climate change. Now, when we go back to your question, then the question would be, when we go back to your question, then I understand that women have very unique skills and experiences that they bring to the table. And the way they will be able to contribute to the topic is simply by strengthening women's leadership and presentation in the spaces where they need to be. That means that from the boardrooms of the water utilities to the national areas, then they should be strengthened. By that, it means that whenever the policies and the decisions are being made, then women leaders should be brought into those spaces, not just to sit, but also to participate in allocation of resources and shape strategies that will affect the key decision. Number 2 is capacity building and providing opportunities. We need to include women and ensure that we capacity build them to be able to make this decision. At WIWAS, what we do is we try to strengthen the capacities that we already have, but we don't do that by ourselves. We try to look for partnerships and to train the women within the sector so that they're able, because they come from all over Kenya, they're able to go back to their respective environments. And when they go back there, they're still able to make impact with whatever learnings they'll have gotten from the teachings that will give them. The last one being a TOT training, which capacitates the women to make them be able to also be trainer of trainers. Number 3 is women at the community level. Just as the PS was talking, we realized that they're looking at increasing the participation of women and in those given areas, in the ASAL areas. And if you look at the cooperatives or you look at the human societies that have been given water resources to manage, you realize that they are more sustainable. Those projects are more sustainable. If you get those ones that are given to women groups, they are able to sustain and be able to repair those given infrastructures when they break down. Because as women, we already know how to manage small resources, the meager resources. So we're able to put it in good use. And for WIWAS, we thought we would go into the ASAL community this January through USAID. Unfortunately, we know that is not now happening, so that we also strengthen them. The next thing is we need to also help women to be able to respond to disasters, because whenever we have floods or droughts, the most affected are actually women and children. So how do we do that? We find that when they are taken, for example, if there's flood and you take them to these places where we take women for safety, then sexual abuse is on the rise. You find when children come from school, you'll always send your girls to go back to the river to fetch for you water, then that becomes a problem. So we need to also ensure that women are empowered to be able to handle such disasters when they occur. And collaborations and partnerships. As you say, you can't do it alone. We can't do it alone. And that's why we say that we try to cooperate with other players within the sector. As we say today, I'm happy that Nairobi it has rained. And we know that February was very hot with a lot of dust and everything. And right now, as it's raining, we try to promote roof catchment, water from the roof to help us conserve that resource that we know is very limited. But as we do that, we need to do what we call sensitization so that people don't just catch it with the dust that we had in February. You need to clean the tanks, you need to wash your roofs. And those are some of the things that we try to bring to women, because we know women are the backbone of the society. If a woman is empowered in that area, then the whole community will be safe, because we'll know it's starting to rain, wash your gutters, bring in the tanks. But as such, the WIWAS community normally goes to schools, and we offer what we call the tanks. And this is the right time that we normally do it. And right now, even if you're sitting within the audience and you have a tank, we are still looking for partnership for people to partner with us so that they donate those to us and be able to take to schools to help them with the rain catchment. And then the last one is we try and support women-led initiatives. And WIWAS as a whole, we hold what we call Toy Awards every December. And we've seen women who have gone into the sanitation space come up during this period. And sanitation is key, because you can't talk about climate adaptation or mitigation measures without talking about sanitation, as we've seen through and through. And we don't only do that, we do that together with the pit emptiers, which we try and give them some kits so that and also train them on what they need to do when they're doing their activities. So we try to push the women innovators to continue doing what they're doing, because as women, we also require male champions within us to continue encouraging us and helping us do what is expected. We know that we have policies in place as a country, and we know we are talking about the 2/3 gender rule, but are they really implemented in a way that will actually give us results that we require? When the board members are being appointed, we have women who are technical, who have the technical know-how. We have women who understands what needs to be done in the sector. But you find that when it comes to the infrastructure development, mostly they look into who do I know or who is in this space, not really who qualifies for this. So we are pushing those women who are qualified to be taken into this position to help us move forward as a country. Thank you.
Asante, Elder, and to something that you mentioned there on a project that you had planned to work with funding from the USAID and in the name of sustainability and also to have the communities be more enabled and strengthened. I'd like to throw this to you, Frisia, our water governance and market systems development specialist, on how communities can effectively mobilize funds and move away, this is in the name of sustainability, from relying on donor funds in the changing ecosystem that we are in.
My input is going to be very short on that because it's so simple. First and foremost, we can never, not that we can, that we are getting to a level where we are going to be moving out of subsidies in the water sector, especially at rural community water access. Besides that, I wouldn't wish for any community to really move away from donor support. Donor support is not only coming in to really like bash whatever they already are doing or to come in to kind of lower the activities with regards to localization and also community participation, but it's also coming in to support them in various important ways. And we have seen it going on very well with the service delivery management models that have come in from the perspective of public-private community partnerships, as well as various other approaches that I've seen in the sector. So I wouldn't really wish for any community to move away from donor aid. Donor aid is not just the infrastructure development, but it's also the soft skills that you're acquiring in terms of capacities towards improving safe water access. So
if I may, Frisia, just to interject on that point, not necessarily move away if it's available, but speaking to the reality of the changing face of what's available and what is not. And that's why I pegged it on what Elder said. This was a project that they had already started or at least were about to start. And then with the changing policies that we've seen from the US, that has been affected. So how can communities empower themselves more to be sustainable? So definitely work with those who are able to support you, and that even is donor-funded projects. But in the event that that goes away, how can the communities strengthen themselves?
Okay, great. I'll still coming to that, Mark. And what we do not talk about a lot in the water sector is how most of our community rural water projects have been able to really move away from these charity-based and also aid-based entities. And we have seen them coming in to take up business-oriented approaches. One of the best utilities that we have in rural water access in the Lake Victoria South region is actually a rural water project that started back in the 90s and has been under a public-private community partnership. That's a whole service delivery management models in itself. So what have they been doing? They have been looking at how they can be able to generate revenues while ensuring that service delivery is ongoing. And this has been more through the community funds themselves. There are various activities, other activities internally beyond looking at sales of water services provision. They have various social enterprises that also have women and youth involved. They have also been able to tap into alternative financing. There are some of the rural water service providers that we have seen accessing loan products that have been in the market even before they were refined well. They have also been able to adapt a lot of technologies that have supported them to reduce their cost while they are increasing their revenues. And these have been more of climate proofing most of the infrastructure. For instance, water services provision in terms of its distribution is being done either by gravity or by solar technology. So the electricity bills are cut. So it's not just about looking at alternative financing, but it's also looking at ways that they can be able to reduce their costs itself. So it's also about looking at the long-term measures that are going to support any water utility, whether it's at that community level or even at a higher level, with regards to how they can now be able to continue being resilient, being able to provide services. And this is not only even coming from the perspective of aid. We saw this also affecting them heavily during the COVID-19 period. At that moment, donors again shifted their priorities. So that happened, and some of these approaches is what really kept them going on well. But again, one more bit that I'd like to emphasize on is on the bit of strengthening their governance agenda. And this is basic issues to do with transparency, participation of the activities, accountability mechanisms, not only just informing communities and their consumers at downward level, but also internal accountability, and also the upward accountability of sharing their data, sharing their information with other sector practitioners for them to know that they are still bankable and they can be able to continue doing business together in terms of keeping that integrity in the investment space. So thank you very much.
Asante for that. And in your responses, as you're responding, it was brought to my attention that we have on the call as well on the webinar, the CEO for the Kenya Climate Innovation Center, KCIC, Bwana Joseph Murabula, and they have an agricultural hub, and he'll be able to speak to that. I'll be able to bring it to you just so that I don't throw you under the bus, but you could probably speak to that in a moment, just after Enoch addresses this issue, which is also attached to the community-led water governance projects, and how you, in your own stance or from your vantage point, you've been able to ensure that they are enabled and they can ensure and climate resilience at the grassroots level, which is where you are effectively, Enoch.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. Indeed, water resource use association play a crucial role when it comes to community-led water governance, and of course, also in enhancing climate resilience at the grassroots level. Here is how we, as KENARUA, this is how we are strengthening their impact. Number one, in terms of strengthening their participation and governance, we are ensuring that there is inclusivity when it comes to decision-making matters of water resource management, by ensuring that all water users in a given sub-basin area are well represented in terms of their interests when it comes to water access. That is, farmers are always included in decision-making on matters of water, households, industries, and also the pastoral communities. We ensure that they are all participating and effectively contributing to issues on water management across the country. And also in terms of capacity building, we are training local communities on the very many robust water policies, laws and regulation governing water resources in Kenya, and of course some of the few of climate adaptation strategies. Also, when it comes to accountability and transparency, which is very, very key in the water management sector, we are promoting open access to information on water management plans and some of the opportunities for finances and also resource allocation. In terms of sustainability of our water resources management, earlier on I mentioned that we indeed recognize that water doesn't come from the tap, but water comes from the catchment. So we are working towards ensuring that our catchments are well protected by ensuring that all communities through the RUAs, participate in watershed restoration, which of course works towards enhancing water availability, water continue running in Kenyan steppes, and of course, again, encouraging conservation agriculture, because again, as much as we want to conserve these resources, we also want to ensure that food production is secured in Kenya by ensuring that good farming practices, farming methods, farmers are embracing to ensure that water quality and quantity is protected, and at the same time, we produce our food sustainability. Also, in terms of best practices when it comes to water conservation, we are also promoting rainwater harvesting technologies through training our members on how to do that, how to protect those harvesting infrastructure, and of course, towards ensuring that there is efficient irrigation techniques, for instance, drip irrigation, hydroponics, for instance, for the flower sector, so that we assure that we are efficiently using our water resources. Again, when it comes to monitoring, we cannot really measure what we don't, without measuring how we are using our water resources, then we cannot make an informed decision. So we are also making use of local knowledge through the water resource utilization. There is a very unique initiative called Citizen Science, whereby we are connecting local knowledge with scientists to ensure that our communities also contribute towards monitoring our fresh water sources in terms of water quantity, water quality, rainfall patterns, and of course, again, to ensure that and understand what are some of the pollutants that are finding their way into our water bodies. In terms of building climate resilience, as per the law, each water resource utilization is supposed to develop a document called a sub-catchment management plan, which is a community-owned plan that is developed through a participatory process. And these plans are community-based, that really ensures that drought, flood, that ensures that there is strategies that ensure that they respond to drought and flood responses, which include alternative water sources and, of course, storage facilities. Again, we are working closely with the government agencies like Water Resources Authority, Kenya Meteorological Department, to ensure that the early warning systems is communicated to our members, again, to all the communities at the grassroots level, so that we assure that there is access to climate information, and farmers and communities can make informed decision or identify interventions to address that. Again, we are also working towards that, ensure that we advocate for sound policies, sustainable management of water resources. Kenya is a water scarce country. Every year there is a drought. There are water conflict issues that arise. Therefore, we establish mediation mechanisms through the RUAs that will resolve disputes over water access, particularly between upstream and downstream users. Again, we advocate for supportive policies at both level, county and national level, to again make sure that we ensure we secure funding and legal recognition for all RUAs across the two levels of government. So again, we are also working to leverage grants and investment, whereby we are encouraging and supporting the RUAs to apply for funding from potential donors. Case in point is the Water Sector Trust Fund, and of course, through a financial institution like, for instance, World Bank, whereby we are working together with the community to access those funds to address climate adaptation programs that are very well factored in the community watershed management plans. And finally, when it comes to technology, things are changing. We are in the 21st century, and therefore we are also again encouraging and supporting our members, our communities, to use mobile platforms for water payments, remote monitoring, and again, to use technology to raise awareness on sustainable management of our water resources, and also to ensure that we amplify community voices when it comes to challenges of water across the country. Thank you.
Asante sana, Enoch, to that response. And we will be hearing from KCIC in a bit, but I see that also Director Daniel is ready to respond. I'll give you an opportunity to respond as we open the Q&A session. Bona Daniel, thank you for being patient because we only have a couple of questions to our panelists, that is to Dr. Barbara, and then I think we'll go to Euphrasia with one more question, and then we can start opening up to the Q&A. And I see Shadrach's hand is up in terms of getting our attention. I've seen you, I haven't ignored, and I'll give you an opportunity to ask your question. However, a good alternative would be to write your question in the comment section. You'll be able to read that because not everyone will be able to speak in terms of asking questions in the interest of time. And please take note of what our team member from KCV, Lucy Ndumi, has put up in the chat section at 11:46 a.m. That we, in the interest of following through with the contacts and staying in touch, that is whether you want to stay in touch with Director Daniel Odero, the State Department of Irrigation members who have joined us, the PS was with us earlier. It is important that you, and also our panelists, it's important that you register using that particular link that has been posted at 11:46. So to Dr. Barbara, it has been mentioned by other colleagues here in terms of our panelists in the discussion. And I want you to speak, and based on your experience and what you are observing of the trends that will influence investment in the water climate sector.
Thank you, Mark. I'll actually pick up from where Euphrasia left off, I think, in terms of the changing aid landscape. I think from our observation, what we are seeing is USAID was the beginner, if I may put it that way. They are a harbinger of what is to come. And we are not expecting that we will see the Dutch or the Danes saying, no, as we are going to give you more. No, I think the trend will be each country trying, first and foremost, to look after its own populations. Yeah, and that's a trend which I don't think is going to go away. And therefore, that positions us differently. And we have to start thinking differently as a continent, as people in this sector in particular. How do we best utilize the resources that we already have? If we are saying we are producing water and we are losing 60% of it, because some counties in this country lose up to 60% of the water that is produced. Engineer Kakubia is on this call and he can give you the numbers. When we translate that into money, it is a lot of money. It's not a small amount of money. So how do we begin to take seriously the issue of efficiency improvements within this sector so that we stop producing this bread and then we give away, we throw away half of it? We have to stop that because we don't really have much space in terms of looking to development partners to say they are going to come and close this gap. We haven't talked about this, and I'm glad Director Daniel is still on the webinar. We have to have a different conversation about government's budgeting for the water sector. Some work that we did showed that at best, the government of Kenya will allocate about 1%, of GDP to the water sector. And there are standards agreed at the international level on what amount is supposed to be going to the water sector. With that level of investment coming from the public sector, it is not possible that we will get to where we need to get in terms of the equitable access, which is what this part of what this webinar was about. We do need to see more government spending into the water sector. And I mean both the irrigation plus the water supply and the water resources side, which Engineer Kakubia talked about a little bit earlier. Then we also need to build new, let me call them new behaviors. Apart from this issue of losing money through non-revenue water, we also have bad behaviors at the consumer level. People don't want to pay their water bills. I don't know if it is the same in irrigation, but in the water supply, we find payment of bills is a major issue, including by government agencies. See now, Government can help itself by paying its bills, because when we do that, it means the water companies have enough funds which can help them to continue providing this service. But if we are not paying our bills, including from government, then we must always go back to somebody else, go to USAID or Danida to cover that gap, which ideally we should be covering as the people who are receiving the service that has been provided. Then we need to go back. If we are going to get private sector, there's a lot of money in the private sector. We normally say for the water sector, money is not the problem. It is how we are organized, or rather disorganized as a sector, which makes investments in our sector very difficult and complicated. If we want the private sector to come on board, we have to have an honest conversation, again, as I said, about the tariffs. When we charge low tariffs, and I think most people will say, no, you cannot increase the water tariff because the poor people will suffer. The truth is, the poor people are suffering anyway because they are not connected to the public systems. The people who are connected to the public water networks are people like us sitting in this room. And when you look at numbers which have been done recently by the African Water and Sanitation Association, AFWASA, you have a situation where the poor people who are buying water by the bucket are paying up to $7 per cubic meter of water when they buy that water through the bucket. Whereas people like ourselves who are connected to the network, we are paying $1.5, maybe $2 at most, for the same quantity of water. So the burden of not increasing tariffs is actually passed back to the poor people. It doesn't help them in any way because they are not connected to the networks. So we have to have a new conversation. If we are not going to be getting money from development partners, where is the money? We must find the money within this system. Water is a service which is sold. Yes, it is a social good, it is a human right, but it is a service that is provided. And therefore, we need to really think through, how do we reorganize ourselves? And this is where, from a place like where I'm sitting at the hub, the Water Governance Hub in Strathmore, we are ready to engage with other partners to think together. We have to have a new dialogue. There has to be a new dialogue in the sector if we are going to make this work. And we are ready to partner with the private sector, with the government entities, so that together we can really find a solution that helps us to put this sector on a sustainability path. Thank you so much, Mark.
Asante sana. And I think this has been addressed somewhat in the previous response, and this is to you, Frisia, as you were talking about where we can look as alternatives and not just be reliant. However, we're still open to the support that we can get from donor funding. I don't know if you agree that these long-standing NGO-funded projects have failed to have a lasting solution, and if you do, why you feel that is the case, but also respond to what governance hindrances that you have witnessed and that you feel have been there in effective water disaster management in our country.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Mark. Let me start by first describing how I would be able to define these disasters. I would take firstly from the perspective of natural disasters, and this could include floods or droughts. Then secondly, I would also look at them from man-made disasters, water-related disasters, like the environmental pollution that we continue seeing, as well as conflicts. And we rarely talk about the conflicts in the water sector. Last year during World Water Day, our theme was on water and peace. And even when we look at Gaza, for instance, one of the first resources and amenities that were shut down was water. And this is not just what we call in terms of conflict, it's what we're now calling water weaponization. So having described the same with regards to now what type of governance issues are related to this, I would like to talk still about the private sector participation. And this is mainly on risk mitigation measures. Let's take, for instance, our country, Kenya. We have been able to see a lot of water-related disasters, from drought to floods. And I'd like to mention a particular one in 2023, when we are experiencing El Nino, and it displaced around 100,000 people. But what was so interesting about this whole issue was how the private sector participation in early warning agenda was not really maximized. At the same time, even with regards to how we have, as a country, underdeveloped the disaster risk financing agenda as well. Let's take, for instance, even what happened in US, New York City, Pennsylvania, Florida. They have done an amazing job. The governors there actually have done an amazing job with regards to responding to the disasters that are happening in their states. And this is something that we can be able to learn on from the perspective of how we need to address water-related disasters from the local level before we take it to the state level. Our challenge, and even look at what happened during the previous floods that we had even last year, was how we waited for the state to come at the local level to be able to address the issue. So the private sector can be able to be maximized at that level very well. Then secondly, I would term it from the perspective of market responsive climate adaptation strategies. So under this, remember 2021 again to 2023, we experienced heavy drought that actually affected around 5 million people. But the thing about this drought that really stood out for me was also how it gave us an opportunity on market-based solutions. And this includes on how we can be able to adapt water storage infrastructure, drought-resilient agriculture, and even blended finance agenda. And I want to bring this to a very interesting news article that you shared very many years back, Mark, when you're a news reporter at NTV, and who shared the news that apparently Governor Waititu had mentioned that we have to move the rivers. And people perceived it as a very silly thing. But if you've been in countries like Netherlands, I mean, you will notice now the important role of market-based solutions that are quite innovative as well, with regards to how can we be able to get innovations that can be able to support us to manage these water-related disasters while continue having human development ongoing. And at this point, I'd really like to call out two people. The first one is definitely who Engineer Gakubia has talked about, the government. I mean, when you're talking about innovations that are coming into the country, like desalination units, they shouldn't be under excise tax that they're imposed upon. I mean, drinking safe water is not luxury. So such of these items should definitely be having lower taxes or probably not taxed at all. So from that perspective, I also want to call up upon the research experts that Barbara has heavily talked about. So these research experts, as I said prior to the PS himself, it's not about you innovating technologies that are going to continue keeping us as a country at survival level. Can we get to that level of prosperity? Can we look at desalination units that are massive? Can we look at wastewater management technologies that are also quite massive? So we're not only bringing in the PPPs, for instance, to address a small portion of the issues that you're facing in the sector, but going to cover a big population. And that's how we can be able to really say that we are advancing faster. And even President Trump went ahead and talked about most of these immigrants. I mean, if you've come to our country, that's what he actually said. If you come to the US and probably it was to study or whatever, gain the knowledge, come back to your country. So, I mean, we are Africans and Africa is a business. So let us do innovations, let us do technologies that are really going to advance our people better. Then the last one that I'd like to talk about is definitely on the issue to do with policy and regulatory bottlenecks. And this even goes into institutional frameworks. And for instance, we have the National Drought Management Authority. They have done an incredible job so far. But regardless, where they're still kind of pending behind is on the issues to do with enforcement. And when you look at most of their work, it's more reactive than it is proactive. So how can we be able to ensure that our disaster response mechanisms are more proactive? The Water Resources Association agenda was discussed also very heavily by the PS himself. And I like that he was factoring them in, but still that issues that they really need to be tackled on, issues to do with their governance, issues to do with their capacities in terms of skills and the like. So that is what is really lacking at that level. And also, if we didn't know, by the way, we have a national disaster management bill that was actually drafted in 2018. And what remains quite interesting is that until to date, it has not been enacted. So you can imagine when you're talking about coming up with all these solutions, whether it's market-based solutions, whether it's nature-based solutions, whether it's the financing, we're going to have a huge impediment from the perspective of having it legislated fast. We are very happy what President did with regards to delineation of roles between the national and county government. It's going to address some of these issues a little bit better, including how we are having delays, for instance, in irrigation projects like the Galana Kulalu project. I recently had the Minister of Water blaming the delays to the Ukraine government. But again, I'm just wondering about what about our own internal accountability? What you're even talking about with regard to how we can be able to look for other mechanisms for funding our agenda beyond just looking at the donors and the like. So how again do we also remain accountable as a government and also as a country? How do we manage the bureaucratic delays that go on in project design to implementation and even to the impact level itself? So that's what I would mention on the first bit of the question. But you also mentioned something that I really enjoy talking about, and that's how the bit on why have long-standing NGO-led water interventions failed to provide the lasting solutions. I'll also make this a little bit short. Yes, indeed, it's a question that I'm very passionate about. At the same time, I would like to start by mentioning that water is politics. We cannot be able to separate the two. It is very political. And this is quite a powerful question altogether, linked to what President of Burkina Faso said. And he said, the French have been in my country for the past 60 years, but we are yet to see the type of impact we expected to see. And this is something that I've also been tackling since 2020, when I stood out in the sector and I talked about decolonization of aid in the water sector, donor accountability in the water sector, and we have seen various great impacts that have happened with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and localization agenda that was championed by the previously said administrator, Samantha. It has made a lot of impact to the Global South agenda. But still, as what the President of Burkina Faso had mentioned, the issues that we're having on donor funding does not mean that, and actually his words were, it's not that we hate the French, it's not that we hate France, but it's about how we want to engage, how they're doing business with us. And that's what we need to tackle. We have to be objective on the issue a little bit better. So when you're talking about this, we're pegging it on the agenda of SDG 6A1, and this is about the official development assistance. We have countries that have been listed to receive this. There is a commitment that also the countries that are supposed to be supporting this, that they have been able to make. So under this, our issues are more about shifting the power to the local countries where we need to be benefiting. And then at the same time, it's on donor accountability. How are we designing the MOUs? How are we looking at M&A indicators? You know, how are we looking at transparency of even the activities that they're supposed to be doing? So for me, it's more of how do we just look at decolonizing the aid, holding donors accountable, shifting the powers to NGO-led interventions at local level. And what we are basically seeing at the moment, it's not that the foreign donors are saying that they do no longer want to support the Global South, but what they're saying is that they want to do transactional. Transactional is the word, transactional business. So it's also now a whole new responsibility for African governments to now sit back and ask themselves, as the donors are planning on how to engage us, how do we also plan on how to receive and operate and also transact with them? Thank you.
Asante Sana, thank you for that, Shafrija. And I don't know whether this can be termed as attached to water disaster, but the irregular, rainfall patterns are getting to concerning levels increasingly. That's why we celebrate when we see rain, at least minus the drainage problems in Nairobi for us. But it's something that we celebrate more because the patterns are not as, liable. And in your view, Christine Atego, from Sunken, as a CEO of Sunken, and your intervention, you feel that investment in irrigation and irrigation systems can do to change that fortune for our country, and even as we speak to the plan that is going to be launched by the State Department for Irrigation?
Mark, as you see, and the rains that now we are facing, the rainfalls are erratic, and as Kenya is facing that, and the ongoing climate change in Kenya already, you see the rain pattern is becoming less predictable, and relying on rain-fed agriculture alone is no longer a viable option. So irrigation allows farmers to have more control over water usage, and using this ensuring that crops are watered consistently even during the drought. And this also helps in extending even the growing season and improving the crop yield, which is essential for food security and economic stability in the rural community. And one of the most promising irrigation technology in this framework is drip irrigation. And it uses water effectively by delivering it directly to the plant root, which reduces water wastage and ensuring that crops get the accurate amount of water needed. So the system not only conserves water, but also helps increase crop productivity, even in regions with limited water resources. So absolutely, what we're looking at, moreover, we need to have more of rain harvesting and also solar-powered irrigation system. And these are also becoming more popular, and they are also sustainable because they use renewable resources like solar energy to pump water and can also store rainwater for future use. So this solution helps mitigate the dependency on the unreliable external water resources and also empower farmers to manage water better and economically. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So just responding to what the Office of the PS Irrigation Office had posted here, and that's why there was a bit of a delay. And I'd like us to open the Q&A session in a bit, just after one response that I'd want to give to one of our participants here in the name of the month and the period that we're in to celebrate women. And women is a group, a sector, at least a population that you work with very closely, Elder Odongo, as the chairperson of Women in Water and Sanitation Association of Kenya. And even though we are at a period of celebrating women, there are statistics that would not be celebrated. At least some sample statistics that we have from the UNDP put it at 75% of women bearing the brunt of water-related disaster. And from the work that you do, I'd like to know how women can actively participate in water climate governance and collaborate to mitigate water-related disasters from your experience and from what you are implementing.
Thank you. It is true that women bear the biggest brunt when it comes to climate changes that we're experiencing today. And what women need to do to help mitigate these effects, number one is we need to do a lot of collaboration on climate resilient infrastructures. And this goes to say that we look for those companies like the one Christine is talking about, where we look at technologies that will be not very expensive for us to run, because again, you look at women, and most of us may not have as much muscle when it comes to resources. So we look at those solutions that we are able to actually afford. And we also work with businesses to invest in nature-based solutions like wetlands restoration, tree planting, and sustainable water resources, which is very important. And as I said, women should be in the forefront of this, because when you create the wetlands, it will be easier for us because we'll be able to get clean water downstream, and that will help us avoid some of these diseases. It's also important that we strengthen private-public partnerships And that is where we come in as the women who are already now working and in these spaces. We engage the private sector in a CSR initiative that support women-led conservation and climate resilience project. Just as I've talked right now about the water catchment areas, we therefore need to engage private sector to support us as we give the solutions to the schools and the women who are vulnerable. We are able to get support from this organization. But we also need to enhance capacity building and research. And a lot has been talked about researchers, and universities and private sector organizations are already conducting studies around this. And we need to develop gender inclusive solutions as they come up with those research results. We also need to organize joint capacity building programs to train women in water governance, entrepreneurship, and disaster risk reduction. What do we need to reduce the disasters that are already with us? So capacity building is important in that aspect. Lastly, we need to drive policy advocacy and awareness, partner with NGOs, government agency, private sectors, and that is what we try to do as viewers to ensure that sensitive water policies, advocate for gender sensitive water policies and climate adaptation strategies. Lastly, social media is a very powerful tool, and we need to have women voices when we talk about climate action, water sustainability, and disaster mitigations. Then our voices as women should be loudest when you're talking about this. And I believe by fostering these partnerships and initiatives, women can be empowered to build climate resilient communities and ensure equality in water governance. Thank you.
Asante sana, thank you, Elder, for that. And we did want to anticipate that everyone responds to this issue, but you've covered it well, especially with your focus and in your day-to-day work. But we will have an opportunity for everyone to give a conclusive remarks. But I'd like to open the Q&A session because we're 10 minutes into the time that we were to get into that. And I'll open it to our director, Daniel Odero from the State Department of Irrigation, who has been with us from the beginning. And I'm sure I've seen you taking notes as we began. And you could first give quick responses if you have particular ones to something that has been said, and also conclusive remarks from your end. Asante sana.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, participants. I think we've had very constructive discussions coming forth. I've been taking notes, very insightful comments from all of us. Thank you, Dr. Barbara. I think even in irrigation, money is not the problem. We had a discussion just last week with financial partners, and money is not the problem. That was the statement coming from the financial partners. So what we are doing in NISIP is that it is an end-to-end engagement where we are bringing on several partners together, because we cannot do it alone as irrigation. We are working with farmers, but farmers need to do investment, like Christina said. These investments require capital. Some of them are capital intensive. And so just to respond to Christine's comments, we are aware that we need to do quite a lot in terms of making irrigation services affordable to farmers, and more so the equipment services. So we are looking at bridging the affordability gap. How can we do this? We have engaged different partners, and as a government, we are looking at policy intervention in terms of tax exemption, which we continue pushing as a State Department to Parliament through our budget committees. Every time we meet, that is something we continue pushing through. It might not come wholesome, but at least when government gives a tax rebate for zero rating, maybe in a certain period of time, removing VAT on some of those key equipments, that is a plus to us. Even the other time, you realized VAT was reduced from 16 to 14%, which was, of course, something. We are looking at establishing credit guarantee schemes with farmers, with development partners, and these are financiers that we bring on the table and discuss, because credit is about them. And you see, they have a lot of credit risks that they fear to lend small farmers because of weather-related risks. And so in this, we also have insurance guarantees that we are discussing with them. We have subsidies that government is giving. We are offering asset financing models. And in this, like for CEO Sankem, for asset financing models, financiers, of course, have a risk nowadays that when they do financing, some tech suppliers then do not proceed with the farmers to maintain these equipments that they provide. So in this, again, we are working in with World Bank to co-create a program called result-based financing, where then we can be able to cushion the financiers, we cushion the farmers, and again, we bring on the technology service providers on board so that we are able to all provide the services that are necessary. So when we, after launching, NISIP will be able to engage further because this is not a one-man show. In a nutshell, we have brought in the farmers, we have brought in the financial institutions, we have brought in aggregators who produce, who provide the market outlets and off-takers. Information services is very important because nowadays farmers require, and even the financiers require data. And data provides the platform where we can be able to reach so much in terms of financial information on the farmers. It can even help the financiers to be able to evaluate the lending capability of our farmers that require the loans or credit for them to use. Actually, we are not nowadays not calling the farmers. The best language to use is agri-entrepreneurs because they are agribusiness practitioners. Government is there with the policy. We as government create the enabling environment. We have the convening power, and this is why we have brought all these partners that we are talking about so that we have an end-to-end production in NISIP. Allow me to also make a quick response to Barbara. Yes, I am aware, and it's very good that payment of bills is very necessary. Actually, in the irrigation space, we are also faced with these challenges. Illegal abstraction is something that that is beyond us, but WRA is addressing this. But for schemes where we have connected water, we have all those irrigation water users association charging levies or water use fees for every farmer that is connected to a water resource. The moment you fail to pay up, then you are disconnected. So this is the O&M fees that is chargeable. At the moment, we are doing a rate of 300 to 1,000 per month, but in the near future, it is more proper to use a cubic meter because then this will make sure that we utilize the resource effectively. When you just charge a standard fees, sometimes there is misuse and then you see a lot of wastage. And we are all aware water is a resource that we need to conserve in the light of climate change. So very soon we'll be charging per cubic meter, and we are using this through water, smart water metering that will be able to regulate how much you pay per cubic meter that you produce. And this will also help you to do your mathematics so that you produce geared to a certain market. And for us, that is the agribusiness that we are all geared towards when we implement NISIP. Finally, I think another remark that I would like to comment is an issue on Galana Kulai. Galana is something that has been discussed, but as you speak now, Galana to us is a thing of the past. We have engaged various development partners in signing PPP agreements. So we have Selu here who is coming to do production on Galana. We have over 200,000 acres of land that is available for Selu. This agreement has been signed, we have been okayed. The other day, it was witnessed by the head of state himself in State House. We have brought on board Aldara, that is another PPP partner that is going to make sure that Galana works by building a dam that then will conserve sufficient water to make sure that we move from the current 20,000 acres that Selu is going to use for production to expand it to the capacity of 200,000 acres so that we are able to produce enough food for this country. This will also help us to lower the import-export ratio that the country is currently facing. So with this, I think if there are any questions, then I'll be able to respond to them as we proceed. But those are the comments I really wanted to make so that I don't forget about them. Thank you.
Indeed, Director Odero, I believe you're going to be doctor soon. That's prophetic. You have been following, based on your responses that you've given, elaborate indeed. You've been following the conversation from the get-go. Asante sana for that. And yes, he's opened it to you in terms of responses. If you have any questions, and I'm seeing in the comment section, as Director Odero was speaking, Joy Adams says, most farmers in Kenya are not well trained. More resources should go towards training. So that's really more of a comment and something that you were addressing. But I will attach that to a response that Enoch, panelist, has responded earlier to Rafael Chola, who had written, "Hi Enoch, please elaborate more on the support mechanisms in terms of training and technologies that you have put in place to ensure the quality and sustainability of water harvesting technologies being introduced to some communities." Now, the answer is here. It's quite elaborate, and I will let you read for yourselves. For those who are on the webinar, you can see that in the comment section. It was responded to at 12:08, and that also speaks to what Joy Adams has brought up in terms of the need for training for agri-entrepreneurs, as Director Odero would say, and not just farmers. And yes, Shadrach had written something here. I believe the comment section has also turned into an advertisement banner saying Family Bank support financing of private and community water schemes through the following initiatives: blended financing, result-based financing, cash flow financing, etc. Asante Shadrach, I believe that's why you had your hand raised earlier. And I believe, yes, there has been responses to any question raised. Please remember to register given the link that has been placed there by Lucy Ndumi at 12:28. She's put it in the chat section quite a few times as we continued so that you can be able to continue networking with our panelists and with the others that you see here. As you can see, Joy Adams has put the number there. Specifically, I don't know if it's to me, Mark, or probably another Mark. I've seen someone else join and drop off the call as named as Mark. And yes, I see Barbara has also responded to this, what Shadrach had placed. Thanks, Shadrach. Family Bank has indeed been a champion in financing WASH, and we look forward to doing more at scale. So this is an opportunity and a platform for more connection with those who are on the call and those who are on the panel. So if there are no questions, you could raise your hand, and in the course of our concluding remarks from our panel right now. Nicholas K. writes, when is the State Department for Irrigation going to address the pending issues which are affecting the completion of the Bwake Dam multi-purpose dam, a Vision 2030 project? Nicholas Kimanzi, I believe it is. Director Odero, you can address this as raised, perhaps.
Thank you, Nicholas, and thank you, Mark. The government is working every day and night. I think Bwake, the issue was the issue of safety in terms of the water resource, but this has been addressed because I think the earlier version was that there was a lot of pollution that was coming through the Athi River, and this has been addressed. You can see even in the Nairobi River restoration program that the PS commissioned the other day. The CS, we are working hard to make sure that all our river waters are not polluted. Bwake is just one example among the many, and this, goes alongside what was raised earlier when we were talking about food poisoning and traceability. So we cannot sit here luxuriously doing irrigation when we know the products that are going to come out of these schemes or farms are going to be food poisoned. That means they'll be rejected in the world market. And so under the World Health Organization, we are also doing a lot of efforts to ensure that our rivers are not polluted. So Bwake is just one of them. And soon, and very soon, I think we do not have this as a problem. Bwake will be completed. The next step that we are now seeing, the dam is complete. What next step we are going to do is now to tap in the irrigation component, it is financed through the African Development Bank, and it had two phases. Phase one was the multipurpose, the section for water supply, and then the other part was now to do the irrigation component, which we are almost now starting with the African Development Bank. Thank you.
Asante, Director Odero, for that response. And now I can hand it over to the panel if there are no further questions in the comment section, but feel free to write it as we're still on with the concluding remarks, and I'll start with our panelist, Enoch. Enoch, you as the CEO of Kenya National Association of Water Resources User Association, your last word as we look forward to this particular launch from the State Department of Irrigation, National Irrigation Sector Investment Plan on Friday, as well as a World Water Day on Saturday, speaking to finally water investments, promoting climate resilience and equitable access.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think one thing I would like to emphasize, and I think I mentioned this in my earlier sentiment, is that water is Kenya's greatest untapped asset. Yes, there are some attempts, but I think we are not achieving it to its full potential. And by this, I mean, we really need data to inform our investments when it comes to water infrastructure. Because I want to just give you a scenario where in Kenya, for instance, we are monitoring everything except what matters most, and that is our water. The government tracks economies, it is tracking health issues, traffic, and even personal conversations. But they are not tracking our water. We are not monitoring our water. Therefore, I would really want to see water being monitored to the letter, so that we are able to know and get to understand really what is happening with our water resources, how much is our catchments giving us, and vis-a-vis how much we are using to produce food or again to produce energy for the country. And again, we also need to know how much are we leaving for the environment to support the biodiversity that we boast of as a country. So therefore, I think I want to emphasize the need to investing into monitoring of our water resources to inform investments in terms of water infrastructure. And therefore, I'm so happy about today's discussion, which have really underscored the vital interconnections between water security, food security, and energy security, clearly illustrating that the sustainable management of our water resources is not just an environmental necessity, but also really a pressing economic imperative. Therefore, we need to commit in making bold investments in really innovative water resource management practices and also sustainable infrastructure. And community engagement is very key. We need to bring everybody on board. Let's leave no one behind when it comes to decision making on matters of water resources. And in doing so, we can create a future where really water security underpins our food systems and energy needs, fostering a healthier community and a healthy planet. Thank you very much. I want to thank the participants for their dedication to this critical cause. Asanteni sana and happy World Water Day 2025.
Asante, Enoch. Don't log off just yet. I know you're in a rush to get into the rally and the activity of rally weekend. Ngoja kidogo. As I now cue on Christine Atego just to speak on concluding remarks, I'd just like to read what Robert Gakubia, engineer, has written here, and a really good response. Irrigation tariffs are even more difficult to collect than domestic water tariffs. In my long years of service in the water sector, I learned that the phrase "money is not the problem" was a polite way of saying me, government, is the problem. So smart meters are not working in domestic water supply. They will not work in irrigation. It's all about the environment. And Barbara, and if someone needs some water here, it's all about the government's environment, as Barbara and Euphrasia have highlighted. And thank you to Engineer Gakubia for staying on throughout. I've heard you mentioned by Dr. Barbara. And Christine Atego, your concluding remarks.
My concluding remarks here, Mark, is what are the key actions that should be taken immediately to improve irrigation in irrigation access for farmers in Kenya? One, I believe the government should prioritize subsidizing irrigation system for smallholder farmers. This with a couple of comprehensive training programs to ensure that effective usage of long-term sustainability. Secondly, also for fostering more private partnership with the smallholder farmers to reduce the financial barrier and improve access to affordable, effective irrigation. Also, I advocate for innovative financial model such as pay-as-you-go irrigation system, which can help farmers overcome the high initial investment barriers. And to conclude this, because I know we are running out of time, addressing the barrier is to access irrigation system requires coordinated efforts from the government, private sectors, and farmers themselves by creating affordable, sustainable, and accessible solutions. The private sector can be powerful driver for agriculture resilience and water security for farmers in Kenya and beyond. Thank you.
Asante sana. And up next, we will have on the concluding remarks, Dr. Barbara.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think I have three things I wanted to sum up on. First, the disaster is already with us. I think there's a quotation somewhere that the number of children who die from diarrhea is equivalent to a Boeing 737 falling out of the sky, every year or something like that. So we already have a disaster on our hands, and that really means we've got to think about how do we make sure that we are delivering these services in an efficient manner so that we stop this disaster, which is already happening with us. The second point I wanted to make is that we have to have everybody at the table. Women are still not at the decision-making table. The statistics from the World Bank indicate in water companies, if I just talk about water companies, forget about government agencies, only 18% of workers are women, only 18%. And when you start looking at their roles in leadership, in management, those numbers begin to decline. There are companies where there is no woman, an engineer, there is no woman MD, no woman in any management position. So we are leaving out 50% of the skills, knowledge, experiences of our communities, of our population. We are leaving them out at the decision-making table, and we will not accomplish what we've set ourselves to do unless we bring this group onto the decision-making table as well. And linked to that is our young people. I was looking at the statistics of Kenya. The population of Kenya right now, they're saying 2025 is like 27 million, of which the median age is 20 years of age. That group, the Gen Zs, who have a lot to offer in terms of their interactions with AI, their interactions with technology, their desire for a better Kenya, a better Africa, we need to tap into that resource, and they can also offer us some solutions to these persistent problems that the sector has faced. And finally, at Strathmore, we stand ready. I think we are known as a hub of innovation, as a very dynamic environment for research and learning. And we stand ready to partner with everybody to see how together we can find these solutions. Engineer Kakubia did note that smart meters don't work in domestic water supply. So the question we must ask ourselves, why? Is it maybe because they are coming from outside and they are not our own? So maybe they are not designed for us. Are these things that we must now really engage on? I see the withdrawal of USAID as there's a silver lining in there, that it forces us to think differently. We cannot be this vulnerable as a people. We need to find a way in which we break this vulnerability. And that really means we have to think critically about where do we go. are there things we can do on our own, without necessarily depending on others or waiting for people from outside to come and tell us that this is what we need to do. We have the brain power. We have everything we need in this continent. So let's take advantage of it and do the best for our continent.
Sana, for your sobering conclusion there, and for reminding me about my age. I'm nowhere close to the age of the country. Asante Sana, Dr. Barbara. Elder Dongo, it's over to you for concluding remarks.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you. Just to add to what Dr. Barbara has just said, it is very clear that women are still left out in the decision-making tables, and this could be a contributing factor to our governance issues in the country. We already understand as a team and even as a nation today, because everybody else is talking about climate change, and we know the effects that we're already facing as a country. And this now comes out as a call for all of us that we need to each play a role. Each of us need to identify what we can do to make things better for us, because if it's only through inclusiveness and collective action that real progress will be made. We need to finish today by just having a renewed commitment as a people and as a team that we are going out there to build resilient communities, and within where we are existing, we try and make changes, however small the change can be. This week is a very important week because we talked about World Water Day, which will be celebrated on Saturday. But just before World Water Day, we have World Forest Day, which is on Friday. Those two events are critical. And if you look at them, they're both helping us just to conserve our environment. So if you miss one, kindly try and participate on the next so that we continue pushing this agenda out and ensuring that we have a healthier planet and a better future for our children and great-grandchildren. And we also leave the world a better place than we got it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elder. And finally, I'll have Euphrasia Luseka have a concluding remarks as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. And I've really enjoyed this session. I've learned a lot of things. I'm even sharing in the Women in Water Association group that Elder is ably leading on the progress that we are making. And I would also request that the participants, especially the women, you are also invited to join the group itself. My concluding remarks are going to start from a statement that the former president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, once said. He said, "A strategy without implementation is just a dream." And I have participated in developing so many policies, legislations, as well as strategies for the water sector in Kenya and also for the region itself. But I tell you, if indeed, even for instance in Kenya, if we even implemented 50% of these key documents, I don't think, even for the donors themselves, as they're trying to probably come out of the 8-bit or even supporting the Global South, I don't think they would probably be thinking of leaving Kenya. And even though they're trying to re-audit and restrategize to coming back better, I also think Kenya would have been on top of their mind if indeed we just implemented the 50% alone. So with the able leadership that we've been able to see today from the PS and his team, I believe that probably if we can even just be able to implement 30% in the next 2 years, Kenya is definitely going to be having that transformational change that could also have a ripple effect to other sectors all together. At the same time, I don't think this is a mandate for only the government. I think we're pointing a lot of fingers on the government. We should also take this as a collective responsibility. Every stakeholder in this sector has a duty to play with regards to making this to be a success, including to be a watchdog and reminding him, because again, the PS is such a very jovial man and very welcoming. I'm sure if he's reminded that you're slacking, he will pull up his socks. So let's do that a little bit better. Besides that, we hear a lot of de-risking in water sector investments. What about if we just change our minds and we get to the level where we're not obsessed with it a lot and we focus on the return of investment? We focus on building this and investing in the sector from the perspective of looking at the growth and leverage on that growth that all this work we have been able to put so far has been able to give us impact on. That way we can be able to even convince the president that in the next financial year, he doesn't reduce the Ministry of Water budget as he did in this year, the next financial year that is actually coming up. We are really disappointed, and probably he'll be able to see that indeed, this is not a sector that is folded back. This is a sector that is looking at transactional business that I talked about. This is a sector that is no longer on survival growth mindset, but wants to get into the prosperity level. And probably then we can now be able to now transform the lives of our people better. Remember, we are Africans and Africa is our business. Thank you so much.
Love it. Asante sana to Euphrasia Luseka, one of our 5 panelists, water governance and market systems development specialist. Also Elder Odongo, chairperson, Women in Water and Sanitation Association of Kenya, WIWAS, as well as Dr. Barbara Kazimbaya, research fellow, Strathmore Water Governance and Innovation Hub, and Enoch Ole Kiminta, CEO, Kenya National Association of Water Resources, User Associations, Christine Atego, founder, CEO, Sunken Limited, and I think I've seen your colleagues joining in the conversation. To conclude this, and also the participation and the conversations that we have had from the State Department of Irrigation, led by CPA Fantas Kimoto, the PS State Department for Irrigation, as well as the Director, Irrigation, Water Management, Harvesting and Storage, Bona Daniel Odero, who's still with us. Asante sana for staying on and for the keynote address from your State Department. Thank you all who have joined in a comment section as our audience, and please make sure that you have registered, and they also have placed there the link for the launch that is going to be happening, the pre-launch that is going to be happening, that is tomorrow, and it will be going on Friday, the actual launch of the plan that is being put forward, that is a National Irrigation Sector Investment Plan by the State Department of Irrigation. It will be at KICC and it is open to you. That is the pre-launch, and you have been invited. See the link there, and make sure you register as well, as has been advised by Lucy in the comment section, so that you can keep in touch with everyone here. Robert Gakubi, engineer, you have said, what a straight talking webinar. This is great. Congratulations to the organizers. And I agree with you. I appreciate Kenya Climate Ventures, KCV, as well as Kenya Innovative Finance Facility for Water, KIFFWA, who have convened this webinar ahead of the launch tomorrow, as well as the World Water Day 2025, which will be on Saturday. My name is Mark Masai. It's been an absolute pleasure being your moderator, and asanteni sana to the panelists and participants. So on Saturday, besides what else you're used to doing on Saturday, so hydrate, and cheers to World Water Day. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Mark, for a lovely moderation. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Asante.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.